I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made choices people don't understand. The morning after our wedding, while I was still in my dress, a process server handed me an envelope. Inside were papers with my name, legal papers, and that's how I learned my husband had cancelled the reception, the honeymoon, and our marriage. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning of my wedding started like something out of a magazine spread, light coming through the hotel curtains, champagne bottles already sweating on ice, my bridesmaids fluttering around in matching robes. Everything looked perfect. I made sure of that. I always make sure of that. I kept saying to everyone that I just wanted a calm morning, but really, I wanted control. If everything looked right, it would mean everything was right. Eli was downstairs with his groomsmen, probably doing whatever men do before they promise forever, drinking beer, making stupid jokes, trying not to wrinkle their suits. I told myself not to think about him too much. Thinking about him always brought this odd mixture of affection and irritation. He was calm, the kind of calm that felt like absence. I used to call it stability. Now it just made me feel like I was married to a sigh. My maid of honor, Lacey, was already taking selfies in the mirror. She loved the chaos, the glamour, the excuse to post. She turned her camera on me and said I looked too serious for someone about to trap a man for life. I laughed and said it wasn't trapping, it was finalizing a good deal. Everyone laughed at that. I knew exactly how it sounded, but the truth was, I liked being the one who could say things other people only thought. Nora, my younger sister, asked if I was nervous. I told her no, that Eli was the safe choice. He's lucky, I added, brushing mascara on my lashes. I'm marrying down and he knows it. They laughed again, my little audience, always ready to turn my sharp words into entertainment. But when I turned, I noticed Diana, Eli's mother, standing in the doorway with a tray of pastries. She had that perfectly polite smile that meant she'd heard just enough. She set the tray down and said something like, "It's good to see you so confident this morning." Then she left before I could say anything. I told the girls not to worry, that she was just the sensitive type. But the truth was, something in her look bothered me. Like she knew I was already slipping out of the role I was supposed to play. The makeup artist asked about the color palette for my reception table. I went into detail, talking about the gold trim, the champagne silk, the exact hue of candlelight I'd demanded. Every detail was curated by me. My company handled events like this for clients every week. It had to be flawless. Eli kept saying he didn't care about details. He just wanted people to have fun. I found that so small-minded. Fun fades. Impressions last. While the girls got dressed, I slipped into the bathroom and checked my phone. A dozen unread texts. A few from vendors. One from Lacey. She must have sent it last night. Everyone's still talking about last night. Delete those videos before anyone checks. My heart skipped, but I laughed quietly to myself. It wasn't panic, more annoyance. I'd already deleted the ones on my phone. Lacey had been joking about her archives, her silly habit of recording everything after a few drinks. I didn't think she'd actually kept anything. And besides, it wasn't like we'd done anything that bad. I told myself that over and over as I looked in the mirror. What happened last night was just part of the excitement, that wild little pre-marriage spark. Eli would never understand that kind of thing. He was practical to a fault. If anything, it was his fault for leaving me alone at the bar so early. He said he wanted to feel good for the ceremony, which I took as code for boring. I stepped back into the suite, forcing my best smile. The girls were crowding around the mirror, fixing earrings, curling hair, laughing too loud. I told them to keep it down, that I wanted this morning to feel elegant, not chaotic. Lacey rolled her eyes and said something about how I was acting like a queen. I said that's exactly what a bride should act like. When the photographer arrived, I straightened my shoulders and switched into my professional mode. Smiling, tilting, knowing which angle hid the little lines near my mouth. Everything about me looked calm, graceful, enviable. Even Nora whispered that she couldn't believe how relaxed I was. I told her, when you know you've already won, there's nothing to be nervous about. Inside, though, I felt something heavy. Not guilt, not exactly. More like irritation that people were making me second-guess a few choices that weren't even serious. I told myself that if any woman were honest, she'd admit she wants attention, wants proof that she's still magnetic, before locking herself into one man forever. And honestly, it wasn't like Eli was going to find out. He wasn't the type to go snooping. When I walked to the window and looked down at the courtyard, I could see him standing with his best man. They were both checking their watches, neat little black suits in the sunlight. He looked so composed, so normal. Part of me loved that, and part of me hated it. He was the kind of man who would forgive almost anything until he didn't. "Smile, Sabine," Lacey shouted. I turned, lifted my champagne glass, and laughed on cue. Flash. Perfect. The camera caught a version of me I wanted the world to see. Poised, radiant, in control. Diana came back once more, holding a small gift box. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate and understated. It was Eli's grandmother's, she said. She wanted it to be passed down to the woman who would respect the Marchand name. She smiled faintly. I'm sure she'd be pleased. Something about the word respect made my skin prickle. I thanked her, slipped the bracelet on, and told her how beautiful it was. She left again without another word. The room fell quiet for a moment. I could feel Lacey looking at me, trying not to laugh. She totally hates you, she whispered. She'll get over it, I said. They always do. But as I turned back to the mirror, I caught my own reflection, smiling too wide, eyes too bright. There was something off about it, something almost desperate. The florist called to confirm the centerpieces. The driver texted that the limo was ready. I felt the rhythm of the day pushing forward, unstoppable. Everyone in the suite was rushing to gather their things, but all I could think about was that text. Delete those videos before anyone checks. My phone buzzed again, another message from Lacey. Seriously, Sabine, I mean it. I swallowed hard and locked my screen. I told myself it didn't matter. People exaggerate. No one would actually look. Besides, what was there to find? A few harmless moments between friends? Still, as I stepped into my wedding gown, my hands trembled slightly. I told Nora it was just excitement. She smiled and hugged me, saying I looked like the happiest bride she'd ever seen. I told her she was right. I told her everything was perfect. But when the elevator doors opened and I caught a glimpse of Eli waiting in the lobby, my stomach turned in a way I couldn't explain. For a second, I thought I saw something in his expression. Tiredness, maybe? Or suspicion. It vanished as quickly as it came. I straightened my veil, told myself I was imagining things, and walked toward him with my practiced smile. Whatever anyone thought they knew, whatever rumors were floating around, it didn't matter. I was the bride, the center of every camera lens. And I always knew how to perform. Only later would I realize that the show had already started falling apart, before the vows, before the photos, before the first dance that would never happen. And all because of a few minutes of bad judgment and one message I didn't delete. The night before the wedding was supposed to be simple. Dinner, a few toasts, and everyone in bed early. That's what Eli wanted, at least. But things never stay simple around me. The hotel bar was glowing with that soft amber light that makes everything feel more interesting, more cinematic. Everyone was laughing, the drinks kept flowing, and I felt like I was floating. People kept saying how calm I seemed for a bride, how I wasn't nervous at all. They had no idea why. Eli went upstairs around 11. He kissed my cheek, told me to get some rest soon. I nodded, pretending to listen, but my head was already somewhere else. I remember watching him walk away, his shoulders straight, his posture neat. Dependable, always dependable. Part of me wanted to call him back, but another part of me liked the feeling of being the one left behind for once. Lacey slid into the seat next to me and clinked her glass against mine. "To freedom for one last night," she said. Everyone laughed. I smiled, pretending it was just a joke, but something about the word freedom stayed in my chest like a dare. I told her, "I'm not losing anything tomorrow. I'm just proving I can have it all." Around midnight, the groomsmen started trickling back from wherever they'd been. Eli's college friends, loud, confident, the kind of men who still treated weddings like sports events. They congratulated me, said Eli had hit the jackpot, asked about the honeymoon. I smiled through it all, loving the attention. I wasn't drunk, not really. I was just glowing, high on the power of being the one every man looked at, even if they weren't supposed to. One of them, Daniel, made a joke about me being too good for their quiet friend. I laughed and said, "He's the safe bet, not the exciting one." The words came out too easily. Someone asked what I meant, and I told them marriage was like buying a house. You pick the one that won't collapse, not the one with charm. They laughed. I loved that sound, the way my words filled the room. Lacey ordered another round. She was sitting close to me, whispering how fun it would be if we documented the night for memories. I told her she was ridiculous. She said no one would ever see them, that I'd thank her someday for proof I had fun before I became Mrs. Predictable. It started harmless, just selfies. Then someone joked that every groomsman should get a photo with me. One by one, they came up, posed, grinning, arms around me. Then it got looser, kisses on the cheek, then near my mouth, laughter that went too far. The bar was nearly empty, and I could feel that electricity that happens when people know they're crossing a line and keep going anyway. When Daniel brushed a strand of hair from my face, I didn't stop him. I told myself it was playful. When Tyler whispered something about how Eli was lucky, I leaned closer to hear him, pretending the noise of the bar drowned him out. It didn't. It was quiet. I just liked pretending it wasn't. Lacey caught my eye and smirked. I should have walked away. I should have gone upstairs to my suite and slept like a good bride, but I didn't. I stayed. Because I wanted to feel alive, not settled. I wanted to feel like the kind of woman who could make a room spin just by laughing. Later, we all ended up in the lounge area. Dim lights, music low, shoes kicked off. Someone opened a bottle of champagne from the mini-fridge. Lacey filmed short clips between toasts, cheering, shouting, "Say Beans last night as a free woman." I posed, laughed, leaned in for another round of pictures. I didn't notice how close everyone had gotten until Daniel's hand brushed my leg. He said something like, "Eli's too good for this world." I said, "So am I." I don't even know what I meant, but it made him grin. The others teased, saying I was dangerous. I let them. I liked being dangerous for once. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet. Too quiet, actually. The kind of quiet where you can hear the fizz of the champagne and your own heartbeat. I told myself I was just testing boundaries, not breaking them. A test of control. That's what I called it later in my head. Control. When the last bottle was empty, the guys stood up, stretching, saying they should head out. One of them, Tyler, I think, kissed my cheek goodbye and said, "You sure Eli's the one?" I laughed. "He's the one who showed up." Lacey followed me into the hallway, phone still in her hand. She said I was wild tonight, that I'd regret it in the morning. I told her I never regret anything, that life's too short for guilt. She shrugged, said she'd save the videos for our memories. I didn't ask her to delete them. Maybe part of me wanted them to exist, proof of how wanted I was, even for a night. When I finally got back to my room, the suite was dark except for the blinking light on my phone. A text from Eli. "Hope you're resting. Big day tomorrow. Love you." I stared at it for a long time before replying, "Of course. Can't wait." Then I turned my phone face down. I didn't want to see the next message that came. Another from Lacey. "Don't worry, I've got everything backed up." It's hilarious. I sat there in the dark, trying to decide what that meant exactly. My mind went through every possible version of everything. Then I told myself she was exaggerating like she always did. It was just harmless fun. Everyone does stupid things the night before they get married. Still, when I looked in the mirror across the room, I saw something strange. My lipstick smudged, hair messy, eyes shining like someone I didn't fully recognize. I tried to fix it, but it didn't help. The reflection didn't look like a bride. It looked like someone watching her own mistake in slow motion. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the edge of the bed, and told myself tomorrow would reset everything. That's what weddings do, they cleanse. New start, clean slate. No one would ever know. I believed that so deeply it almost felt true. But there was this tiny voice, quiet and sharp, whispering that I'd already set something in motion I couldn't undo. I brushed it off, told myself guilt is for weak people. I closed my eyes, imagined the ceremony, the photos, the applause, everything perfect again. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was checking that the bracelet Diana gave me was still on the nightstand. It glittered faintly in the dark, catching the light from the window. It looked so delicate. I wondered how much pressure it would take to snap it in half. I didn't know then that downstairs, someone was still talking about me, that Lacey hadn't gone to bed, that the videos she promised to keep just for memories were already being shown around, laughter filling the halls. I didn't hear any of it. I was too busy dreaming about walking down the aisle, pretending I hadn't already ruined the ending. The morning light felt too bright, like it was trying to expose something. My head throbbed, not from alcohol, but from the weight of pretending. The suite was a mess of curling irons, champagne glasses, and dresses half-zipped on chairs. I stood in front of the mirror again, fixing my hair for what felt like the 100th time. If I could look flawless, maybe I could make the night disappear. The ceremony was set for noon. My phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from vendors, bridesmaids, my parents. Nothing from Lacey. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. She was always the loudest voice in the room, the one narrating every moment. Silence from her meant something had shifted. I tried calling, but it went to voicemail. I left a casual message, cheerful, pretending not to care. "Hey, are you alive? We've got photos soon. Don't be late." I smiled while I said it, as if smiling could make my tone sound innocent. By the time I reached the church, the air outside was heavy, almost humid. Eli was somewhere inside with his groomsmen. I told myself not to look at any of them too closely. Not Daniel, not Tyler, not the others who couldn't quite meet my eyes at the rehearsal breakfast. When I saw them walking into the vestibule, all dressed alike in their black suits and matching ties, I caught something in their faces. Awkward politeness, forced smiles, that kind of nervous energy people have when they know something they shouldn't. Lacey finally arrived just before the ceremony, breathless and holding her phone like it was something fragile. She didn't meet my eyes either. When I asked what was wrong, she said she'd had a long night and that I shouldn't worry about anything. I wanted to believe her, but she kept glancing down at the screen, her thumb hovering like she was afraid to touch it. Nora came up behind me, whispering how beautiful everything looked. The flowers, the music, the candles. It really was perfect. I nodded, pretending to take it all in, but my pulse was racing. I could feel Lacey's unease vibrating next to me like static electricity. I asked her quietly, "Is there something I should know?" She shook her head too quickly. "Nothing, I promise. Just focus on your big moment." The doors opened. The music began. Everyone stood. I smiled on cue. Eli was at the end of the aisle, calm, hands folded, eyes steady on me. He looked exactly like a man certain of his choice, and that made my stomach twist. I wanted to feel joy, but what I felt was distance. the kind that can't be fixed by pretty words or perfect photographs. When I reached him, he whispered, "You look beautiful." His voice trembled slightly. I told myself it was emotion. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he already knew something. The ceremony itself went by like a blur of light and sound. Vows, rings, applause. Everyone clapped like they were in a movie. I smiled so wide my face hurt. But when we turned to face the guests, I noticed one of the groomsmen, Tyler again, looking at the floor, his jaw tight. Daniel was fidgeting with his cufflinks, not clapping at all. During the recessional, I leaned toward Eli and asked if he was okay. He nodded but didn't look at me. I brushed it off as nerves. He wasn't a spotlight kind of man. He hated attention. But something about the way he squeezed my hand, once too tightly, made my heart lurch. Outside the church, photographers swarmed. Posed shots, laughter, flower petals falling like confetti. Lacey tried to joke that I looked like royalty. I said, "Well, I am the main event." She laughed weakly, then muttered something about needing to check her phone. I wanted to snatch it from her hands, but I couldn't risk looking paranoid. The wedding party gathered for group photos in the garden. I arranged myself between Eli and the groomsmen, pretending nothing was strange. When the photographer asked everyone to squeeze closer, I felt Daniel stiffen beside me. His shoulder barely brushed mine, but the tension was thick enough to cut. The photographer made us all laugh for a candid shot. I turned my head just in time to catch Daniel whispering something under his breath. I couldn't hear it all, but I caught the words, "Hope he never finds out." My heart skipped. I froze mid-smile. "What did you say?" I asked. He looked startled, then shook his head. "Nothing, just talking to Tyler." He stepped back slightly, forcing another smile for the next shot. I kept smiling too, but my stomach dropped. The photographer told us to switch positions, to line up again for individual shots. Eli kissed me for one, soft and polite. The flash went off, and for a split second I saw his eyes, calm, unreadable. It scared me more than if he'd looked angry. As the photos wrapped up, one of the bridesmaids whispered that guests were gossiping about something. "Someone's saying there's a video," she said. My throat went dry. I asked what kind of video, and she shrugged. "I don't know. Probably nonsense. You know how people talk." But she looked away when she said it. Lacey was on the phone again, whispering urgently near the limo. I walked toward her, trying to keep my smile plastered on. When she saw me coming, she ended the call too fast. "Who was that?" I asked. She sighed. "Don't freak out, but there's been some chatter. One of the guys, Tyler maybe, shared a clip last night. People saw it. It's stupid, but..." I grabbed her arm. "A clip of what?" She hesitated. "You, dancing, laughing, maybe a little too close to them." I forced a laugh. "That's all. God, Lacey, you scared me. People overreact to everything." But she didn't laugh back. "Sabine, there's more than one clip." I froze, still smiling for the photographers nearby. "Then delete them," I hissed. "Now." "I can't," she whispered. "They're already out there." I turned and saw Eli talking quietly with Daniel, his expression unreadable. Daniel looked pale, his hands shoved in his pockets. My pulse roared in my ears. Nora came bounding over, cheerful and oblivious. "Everyone's ready for the reception. You're glowing, Sabine." I thanked her and forced my voice steady. "Of course I'm glowing. I'm married." Inside, my thoughts were racing. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe people would just think it was harmless fun. But the way Lacey was biting her lip told me otherwise. When we climbed into the limo, Eli sat beside me but didn't reach for my hand. I told myself he was tired, overwhelmed, anything but suspicious. I tried to fill the silence with chatter about the reception, the dinner, the music. He just nodded occasionally, eyes fixed out the window. The ride felt endless. Every vibration of my phone made me flinch. Lacey sent one last text before we pulled up to the venue. "You need to talk to him before someone else does." I deleted it immediately. I wasn't about to ruin my own wedding day. If there were rumors, I could outcharm them. I always did. I told myself that whatever had happened last night would fade into another story, another secret people would forget. But when we stepped out of the car and the murmurs rippled through the crowd, waiting at the reception hall doors, I knew it wasn't fading. Something was already burning behind those polite smiles. I leaned close to Eli and whispered, "Ignore whatever you hear, okay? People love drama." He didn't answer. He just looked at me for a long, quiet second, and the silence between us said everything I didn't want to hear. The reception hall was everything I had imagined. Soft gold lights, candles flickering on mirrored tables, the string quartet playing something delicate. For a few minutes, I let myself breathe again. The whispers would fade once everyone started drinking. That's what people do at weddings. They gossip, then move on. Eli stood beside me as we greeted guests at the entrance. He was polite, calm, too calm. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I told myself he was just tired. He always got quiet in crowds. But every time I glanced over, he wasn't looking at me. He was scanning faces, as if searching for something. Lacey came up to me halfway through cocktail hour, her face pale. She said the worst sentence imaginable. "Someone's showing people the clips." My throat closed. "What clips?" I asked, playing dumb, even though I already knew. "Don't, Sabine," she whispered. "It's the videos from last night, the ones with you and the guys. Someone airdropped them to half the room." I felt everything go still around me. The music kept playing, people kept laughing, but all I could hear was the pounding in my head. "Are you sure?" She nodded, eyes wide. "I tried to stop it. I don't know who started it. I think Tyler, maybe Daniel, but everyone's seen them. I mean, everyone." For a moment, I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, to run, to rewind time. But instead, I straightened my back and smiled like nothing had happened. That's my talent, pretending. I told Lacey to calm down, that it was just people being dramatic. She said, "Sabine, it's bad." But I walked away before she could explain how bad. I wasn't going to let anyone see me flinch. The photographer wanted more couple shots. I stood beside Eli again, forcing my best grin while my insides twisted. He didn't touch me. Not my hand, not my waist, nothing. When the flash went off, I turned toward him. "You okay?" I whispered. He nodded once. "Fine." It was the way he said it, flat, mechanical, that made me panic. Something in me knew he already knew. At the bar, I saw Daniel and Tyler arguing quietly. Daniel's face was flushed, his hands waving as he tried to explain something. Tyler just shook his head and walked off. When I started toward them, Daniel saw me and froze like a child caught stealing. He muttered something, "Sorry, Sabine," and disappeared into the crowd. People's eyes followed me when I walked by. Women whispered to each other. Men avoided looking directly at me. Even my sister Nora seemed uncomfortable, her usual bubbly chatter replaced by stiff smiles. She finally leaned in and said, "Why are people acting weird? Did something happen?" I laughed lightly. "You know how people are. One rumor and they lose their minds." She frowned. "A rumor about what?" I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand and said, "Don't believe everything you hear." The coordinator announced dinner. Guests began taking their seats, but the atmosphere was wrong. Too quiet, too heavy. The laughter was forced, the clinking of glasses faint. I sat beside Eli at the head table, smiling for photos, pretending I didn't feel the air shifting. Halfway through the first course, Eli's best man, Mark, stood up and said he needed a minute. His voice shook. "I don't think I can do this," he said quietly, then left the table. The whole room watched him walk out. I wanted to chase after him, but Eli placed a hand on the table, not touching me, just enough to stop me from moving. When I looked at him, he was staring straight ahead. His jaw was tight, his breathing slow. I whispered, Eli, whatever you heard, it's not what people think. He finally turned to me, his eyes cold and calm. What exactly are they thinking, Sabine? I felt my throat tighten. Nothing true, I said. Just people twisting things. You know how drunk groomsmen get. Someone probably edited something. It's childish. He nodded once. Right. Then he stood up and walked toward the stage. I thought he was going to give a toast. My stomach dropped as he took the microphone. He didn't raise his glass or smile. He just waited until the music stopped, and the whole room turned to him. Thank you all for being here, he said. I'm sorry for the confusion. The reception is cancelled. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. His voice didn't waver. There's been a misunderstanding, he continued, and I need to handle it privately. I appreciate everyone's kindness, but the evening's over. People gasped, chairs scraped against the floor. I stood up, trying to smile, pretending it was some elaborate surprise. He's just tired, I said, laughing. Big day. You know how men get. He turned to me then, and the look on his face shut me up completely. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was detachment. My father stood up, furious. What's going on here? He demanded. You can't humiliate my daughter like this. Eli didn't even look at him. I'm not humiliating her, he said quietly. I'm setting boundaries. Diana, his mother, stepped forward, calm as ice. Let's all go home, she said to the guests. The couple needs privacy. Then she turned to me. You should too. I could feel every eye in the room on me. The whispers started again, sharp, cruel, impossible to ignore. Lacey tried to approach me, but I waved her away. I didn't want anyone's pity. Eli handed the microphone back to the DJ, then walked off the stage. He didn't stop when I called his name. He didn't even slow down. I followed him into the hallway. Eli, wait, I said, grabbing his arm. You can't just walk out. We need to talk. He turned, his expression unreadable. I've seen enough, Sabine. My heart pounded. You don't even know what you saw. People are lying. Someone's trying to ruin this for us. He studied me for a long moment, then said softly, No one had to lie. You did it yourself. He walked away, leaving me standing there in my gown, the train dragging across the marble floor. I could hear guests leaving behind me, their heels clicking, their voices hushed. Someone said, I knew she wasn't right for him. Someone else said, What a mess. Lacey came up beside me, whispering, He's gone, Sabine. I think he's checking out of the hotel. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking, clutching the fabric of my dress like it could hold me up. I whispered, He wouldn't really leave. Not like this. But she didn't answer. Back inside the hall, the lights were dimming. Staff were already clearing plates. My father was arguing with Diana in the corner. Nora stood frozen near the table, looking small and frightened. I walked back in, head high, pretending I still had control. I told the nearest server to pour me another glass of champagne. He hesitated but obeyed. I drank it in one gulp, ignoring the stares. If everyone was going to turn me into a villain, I might as well play the part. But when I looked toward the stage and saw the abandoned microphone, the half-eaten meals, the empty seat where Eli should have been, the truth finally hit me. This wasn't a scandal I could charm my way out of. It was already done. And the echo of his words, I've seen enough, followed me long after the music stopped. The morning after felt unreal. The hotel suite looked like a battlefield. Half-open makeup bags, crushed flowers, my gown still hanging in the corner, like a ghost of the woman I was supposed to be. My phone was filled with messages I didn't want to open. Calls from my parents, from Nora, from unknown numbers. No message from Eli. I kept telling myself he'd cool off. He wasn't the type to act rashly. He'd see that walking out was dramatic, that things had gotten blown out of proportion. He'd text eventually, something calm and forgiving, the way he always did. But the silence stretched hour after hour, and that hope started to feel stupid. By noon, I called his phone, Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. The pit in my stomach deepened. I finally called Diana, thinking maybe she'd mediate. She answered on the second ring, her tone polite but distant. "Diana, please," I said. "Can you tell Eli to talk to me? This has gotten ridiculous." She paused before answering. "Sabine," she said slowly, "I think it would be better if all communication goes through his attorney from now on." "His what?" I said, laughing nervously. "You're joking." "I'm not," she said. "You'll be contacted soon. Goodbye." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, certain I'd misheard. Attorney? For what? I hadn't done anything illegal. I called Lacey next, furious. She didn't pick up either. Of course she didn't. She was probably hiding, terrified of what she'd started. By that afternoon, I'd checked out of the hotel and gone back to my apartment. The quiet there was worse. My wedding dress sat in its garment bag on the couch like an accusation. The smell of perfume and roses hung in the air, sweet and sour at the same time. A knock came at the door around 5. For a second, my heart leapt. Eli, finally. But when I opened it, a man in a grey suit stood there holding an envelope. "Sabine Marchand?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He handed it to me. "You've been served." Then he walked away. I closed the door slowly, staring at the papers. I tore them open, my hands shaking. Petition for annulment, filing for asset protection, request for reimbursement of marital expenses incurred under fraudulent circumstances. The words blurred together. Fraudulent circumstances. That's what he thought our marriage was. Fraud. I sank onto the floor, trying to breathe. It felt impossible that the man who used to make me coffee every morning had turned me into a legal problem overnight. When I finally called Nora, she sounded hesitant. "Sabine, he's serious," she said quietly. "He's already met with lawyers. They've frozen the joint account." "What joint account?" "The one you used for the wedding. He's saying you used his funds under false pretenses." I laughed in disbelief. "False pretenses. We were getting married. He paid for a wedding. That's how it works." Nora didn't laugh. "He has the videos, Sabine. All of them. Someone sent them directly to him." My heart stopped. "Who?" "I don't know. But he's not talking to anyone except his lawyer. Mom and Dad are panicking. They think you should lie low until it blows over." "Lie low?" I snapped. "I didn't commit a crime." But she just sighed. "You might not have broken the law, but you broke him. That's worse." I hung up. I couldn't stand her tone, that quiet disappointment. I poured myself a drink, ignoring the fact it was barely noon, and opened my laptop. The first thing I saw was my own face. Screenshots, blurry stills, gossip threads. Someone had leaked everything. My name was trending locally. Comments scrolled faster than I could read them. People calling me every name imaginable. Others dissecting the footage like investigators. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest tight. This wasn't just a private mistake anymore. It was public. And Eli wasn't defending me. He wasn't even speaking. 2 days later, an email came from his attorney. Short, cold, professional. "Mr. Marchand requests no direct contact. Any communication should go through legal counsel. Please provide confirmation of receipt." I read it 3 times, each line colder than the last. I wrote back immediately. "Tell him he's overreacting. Tell him I still love him." I never got a reply. By the end of the week, every shared account, card, and subscription was locked. The honeymoon bookings were cancelled. My name was removed from the lease of the house we were supposed to move into next month. Everything was unraveling with mechanical precision. It hit me then. He wasn't acting out of anger. He was strategic. This was planned, measured. He'd chosen silence as his weapon, and it was cutting deeper than any shouting ever could. I called my father in tears. He said I needed to fix this mess quietly. My mother wanted to post a statement defending me, saying the videos were doctored. I told her not to. It would only make things worse. At night, I lay in bed replaying every moment, every laugh, every careless word. Part of me still believed he'd come around. Another part knew that the calmness in his face at the reception meant something final. A few days later, I showed up at his office unannounced. The receptionist froze when she saw me. "He's in a meeting," she said. "I'll wait," I said. I waited 2 hours before a young associate came out holding a note. It read, "Please respect the legal boundaries. Do not return." I ripped it up right there. How could he turn our life into paperwork? How could he make me into a villain when all I'd done was, been human? Made one mistake? When I got home, there was a letter waiting. It wasn't from his lawyer this time. It was from Diana. Handwritten, precise. "Sabine, I hope someday you understand what you destroyed. My son will not speak ill of you, but the truth doesn't need his voice to exist. It's already documented. I suggest you stop trying to twist it. Move on quietly." Below her signature was a printed page, screenshots of my own messages, ones I'd forgotten about. I felt my stomach drop as I read them. My text to Lacey joking about sampling the merchandise before marriage, the heart emojis, the videos with timestamps. Proof. I wanted to tear the letter apart, but I couldn't. I just stared at it, realizing the trap I'd built for myself. Every defense I could think of dissolved. I told myself he was cruel, that this was about pride, not pain. But deep down, I knew this was the only way he could reclaim his dignity, by using the truth. When I finally crawled into bed that night, the city lights flickered outside the window. My phone stayed silent. I tried to imagine what Eli was doing. Probably sleeping peacefully, his account settled, his future clean. I whispered to the dark, "He'll regret it." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it, because for once, I wasn't the one holding the power. He was, and he didn't even need to say a word to prove it. The courthouse smelled like paper and dust. I wore a black dress, simple, respectful. Eli sat across the room, eyes steady on the judge, never on me. The clerk read the final approval for the annulment, her voice flat and final. I wanted to speak, to say something clever or defiant, but the words wouldn't come. When it was over, he stood, signed once, and left without looking back. I followed him to the hall, whispering his name. He didn't stop. The doors closed behind him, and all I could think was, I never even got to dance at my own wedding. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.